Today we are at the old Mackinac Point Lighthouse.
Gorgeous. Love it, love it, love it.
Is the other interpreter up in the watchroom of the tower. But today you're going to be going on our tower tour. You're also going to be learning about why this lighthouse is here, the history of the site, and also what the lighthouse keepers were doing here while the site was actually active. So to get us started, out of curiosity, raise your hand if you've ever been to or seen a lighthouse in person before. Alright, so we got a mixed group today. So whether this is your first time to a lighthouse or your umpteenth time, all lighthouses are trying to send one of two messages to the sailors in the water. Now that message was either come this direction or to stay away. And here at Old Mackinac Point, the message that they were trying to send was to stay away. Reason for that is that if you look outside today, you'll notice there's a color difference in the water. There's a lighter area and then there's the darker area. Now that lighter area is the shallow part. That shallow part wraps around the northern tip up here and forms a shelf line that goes about 4 feet deep. And before this light station was established in 1889, they feared that ships could potentially cut the corner off on the east side too early and could run aground and wreck. And then in 1869, another lighthouse called McGulpin Point was built 2 to 3 miles that direction. And ships coming from the west could see it, but ships coming from the east still could not. So there were calls for them to either rebuild McGulpin Point or build a completely new light station. And that's how we got our start here at this site. They're using different technologies and methods to send the message to the sailors in the water, which you'll learn more about that once you actually get up into the watchroom of the tower. Now, speaking of which, there are 51 steps up to the watchroom. There's going to be one step that's going to be painted yellow. That's once you get closer to the top of the tower. Once you get to that step is telling you that you need to start ducking down so you do not hit your head. And then once you get past that step, you'll be able to see when you can stand up straight. If you have any electronic devices, I do ask that you put them on the silence mode at this point so they do not go off while you're up there, because if they do, they will echo, disrupt the tour. Some people get distracted very easily, and we don't want that to happen. And then you do need to be hands-free going into the tower, so if you can secure your maps, phones, ticket schedules, whatever, into your pockets, I would greatly appreciate that, so you can grab onto the hand railing as you're going up for safety.
Welcome to the watch room. My name's William. I'm the other lighthouse interpreter, museum educator here at Old Mackinac Point. And the room we're in right now is called the watch room. This is where the lighthouse keeper and the assistant keeper would have conducted their watch. Now, they weren't up here to watch for ships, although they would occasionally note in their logs vessels that passed by the lighthouse. They were instead watching the light up in the lantern room, which is the room directly above us. That is where the light itself was located. And they would have made sure that that light did not go out. They would work up here in shifts. So while one person was up here watching over the light, the other person was downstairs getting some sleep, getting something to eat, or using the restroom. And they would have switched places several times throughout the evening. Now, they had 3 different types of lights up in the lantern room over the course of our lighthouse's service. The first type of light they had up there was an oil lamp from 1892 until 1913. And it basically was a candle light that used a pig lard or pig fat as its fuel source. Then in 1913, they switched to a kerosene lantern, which worked a lot like a Coleman camping lantern. The kerosene would be preheated to a certain temperature, shot through a Bunsen burner, which turned it into a gas. You would light this gas with your match, creating a flame, and that flame was your light. Then in 1929, they switched to electricity, and they had a light bulb up here in the tower. Now, all 3 of these lights would have been housed inside what they call a Fresnel lens. And what a Fresnel lens basically does is it acts like a magnifying glass. So it takes beams of light and it bends them. A lot like a prism or a crystal does. This widens the beam of our light, which makes our light appear brighter and allows our light to be seen much further away. Our light could be seen 16 miles away. So that's enough to cover the entire Straits of Mackinac. So it was very good at its job. Now, in order to get the lens to rotate, or let me go back here, the lens would not stand still the whole night. It would actually rotate 360 degrees. And this was so our light could flash or blink once every 10 seconds. And that was so the ship captains knew which lighthouse it was. Every lighthouse would have a different pattern for its light. Now, in order to get the lens to rotate in the days before electricity, they had to use a system very similar to a grandfather clock or a cuckoo clock. So they had a big metal weight that went down this shaft right here. It was connected to a metal chain which went through this loop right here. Then it would angle off and go through the T-shaped hole in the floor there. Then it would wrap around a gear, and that gear was attached to the lens. So what would happen is as the weight slowly made its way down the shaft, wind the chain, which turned the gear, which rotated the lens. It took about 5 hours for the weight to reach the bottom of the tower. Once it did, the lighthouse keeper or the assistant keeper, whoever was up here at the time, they would have hand cranked the weight all the way back up. In 1940, the weight system was replaced by a motor. They had a motor rotating the lens. But that weight is still sitting at the bottom of the shaft even today. And so at the end of the tour, you are more than welcome to check that out and see that sitting at the bottom of the shaft. Now in 1957, the lighthouse was taken out of service when the Mackinac Bridge was completed. The bridge is 5 miles long, has two 552-foot tall towers, whereas our single tower here is only 52 feet tall. The bridge is 5 miles long and it's covered in lights across its entire length. So it can be seen much farther away than our lighthouse ever could. And so in 1957, the lighthouse was decommissioned and was taken out of service. Any questions about any of that?
What year did you say? It was decommissioned?
1957.
57.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay. Well, if you folks are ready, I'm going to send you up into the lantern room. You'll have a few minutes up there to take some pictures and enjoy the view. Next, if there's anyone that doesn't want to go
Top
on
of the lighthouse.
And by the way,
For me, you flew into that.
Yeah, probably.
no problem.
All right, I'll go behind with you.
Well, folks enjoy the view up
Top
there.
of my head.
Was the original Fox building, and that was in 1890. That building would have sat in the area where these benches are. Now, it's not here anymore, and we have the 1906 building. Now, the reason why we have the 1906 building and not the 1891 is because that first building, there were some things wrong with it. One of the issues was that the whistle they had, which they had two of them, they were on the roof of the building, but they were on the southern end of the roof. So not only would have the noise traveled out toward the lake, but where else do you think that noise would have traveled out towards? Right, toward the village. It's not really what it needs to do. Even though they thought if they put it on the roof, it could go all around, it still doesn't need to go that way. And then in 1892, when they built the lighthouse, they noticed that the lighthouse was too close to the Fox in the village, and that was probably blocking the sound from traveling out toward the lake. So they decided that they needed to separate the two. And which building are you going to move? Either the lighthouse or the Fox in the building. Which one? Right, the Fox in the building, because it's the smaller one of the two. Except there was still one more issue. What I mean by that, the property that you see today was much smaller back then. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about visually, if you want to follow the front fence, the property line went down as the front fence does today. Where it turns the corner down here, rather than continue on like it does now, to a right angle and went straight to the back fence. So basically this is where the property line stopped. This was one small square, not a lot of room to move buildings or to even build a new building. Now at that time in 1892, on the other side of the fence where the new building sits, that was owned by the village of Mackinac City and was part of the public park that was plated in 1857. Now at that time, the government did want to purchase the property from Mackinac City, but Mackinac City did not want to purchase that property, sell the property. And so the government then took Mackinac City to the fort, through the court system, which that court battle lasted for 12 years. And in 1904, the court system ordered that Mackinac City had to pay the government, had to sell it to the government. But at that time, the government did not have the money to purchase that property, the Lighthouse service, that is. And so it wasn't until 1905 that Congress appropriated the funds for $400, which is about $10,000 to $15,000 in our modern day. They purchased the property, built a new ball field in 1906. This building that sat here was then moved back to where the shipwreck museum is today. That's that building behind you. Now that building is a reconstructed version of it because it was torn down in the 1930s, and then this was first used in November of 1907. Now, if you look at the building itself, you're going to notice that it's going to have a very unique look to it, with the pointed dormers and also the red color of the brick. Now, the reason why it's built like this, designed like this, is because when they built the new building, they were trying to match the front style of the lighthouse, which looks like a castle. So they're trying to match that same style, almost like a European or Tudor style building. Then, in 1909, if you look at the chimney, you'll notice that there are two different color variations in the chimney. Now that chimney, the lighter one, that was added on in 1909 to help with the exhaust of the locomotive-sized steam engines. Now those steam engines, give you an idea how big those steam engines are. I was up at Ensemble Point Lighthouse back in August. That's up in Unison between Kitchen Rocks and Britain on that lake shore. They have their original air tanks there. Those air tanks were the length of the two front benches up here. So these two over here. That's how long they were. Now, here at Old Mackinac Point, we had two of them. Two locomotive-sized steam boilers. One was a primary one, then the other one was a backup one. They originally were wood burning, but later on they did switch to coal. And those were here when they first put the first building in 1890. They just reused them. Then, in 1937, they placed a 132-foot radio beacon tower over in that direction, which they used to help send the radio reports of the weather and whatnot, so ships could figure out where they were in the Straits of Mackinac, and they put the radio equipment inside the building as well. So when you exit through the gift shop today, try to picture it without the merchandise, without the ticket booth, but with all the equipment fitting inside that one building, because it would happen. Now, when it gets foggy out, the ships have to know where they're at. Because for one thing, they don't have the radio tower until 1937, and so they have to use what's called a sound sequence, meaning each lighthouse is using sound to send a message. And there's like a difference between the sounds. What I mean by that, for instance, up in Gulliver, Michigan, up on the north shore of the Lake Michigan, there's a lighthouse called Shore Lighthouse. Now, that lighthouse, they have their own sound sequence there. Now, that sound sequence is basically their sound sequence was a 4-second blast of sound, followed by 26 seconds of silence, followed by another 4-second blast of sound, followed by another 26 seconds of silence. Now, here at Old Mackinac Point, just to show you how much difference each of these lighthouses are. Ours was originally a 5-second blast of sound, followed by 17 seconds of silence, followed by another 5-second blast of sound, followed by another 10 seconds of silence. Now, if you add all those seconds up, what does that equal? Well, how much? Right, equals 1 minute or 60 seconds. Now, that minute could and would repeat itself depending on the weather conditions. Now, sometimes that blast would last for an hour. Sometimes it would last for a day. There was one time, though, fires in the Upper Peninsula, and winds pushed the smoke this direction, which caused the dense fog to cover the area. That lasted for 1 week. Now, for the standard, begin to sound off the whistle. Well, in 1890, 1906, up until when the site was decommissioned in 1957, there was no set standard. It was on the discretion of the lighthouse keeper. So take, for instance, if he couldn't see Round Island, Mackinac Island, or even the Upper Peninsula from here, because before visibility, he would sound off the whistle. So with that being said, if you like to follow me, we're going to get a closer look at the whistle from down here. So come this direction. I'd like to stand on the other side, closer to the bin, so you can get a good look at it without straining your necks. whistle. This whistle you see today, though, is not the original one. This one is our replacement one that was put in about 2017, 2018. This is, however, the same size whistle that would have been here. It's about a 10-inch size diameter whistle. Now, the reason why it's not the original one is because in 1933, they took down the original one and placed air horns on the roof of the building. The platform is still up there, but the air horns are no longer there. Now, real quick, on those air horns, when we think of that stereotypical fog horn, we think of the two-note, da-da. We're just called a diaphragm fog horn, meaning two notes. Here at Old Mackinac Point, we had a diaphragm, meaning to one note. And how those air horns are working is that you're using an air tank around those sheet metal, which is then magnified out using a horn or trumpet. This is a whistle, so I think that whistle that you may find on a locomotive steam engine, on a sailing ship, or that type of whistle that you may blow into. That's what this is. So if there's anything I want you to come away with today, is that I'm doing a fog whistle demonstration and not a fog horn demonstration, because there's a complete difference between the two instruments. Now, unlike today though, I'm not going to be using steam to run our whistle, I'm going to be using compressed air. Two reasons for that. One, steam over time will corrode the whistle faster because it does have a lot of moisture in it, and we want our whistle to last longer. And two, it takes a lot of time, energy, resources, and power. Even though there are two interpreters here today, that boiler steam engine combination can get very dangerous as well. So that's why we're using an air tank. It's much safer. Now, it's going to be a much higher pitch than what historically would have been, which was at a lower pitch. But that doesn't really matter. What matters is the seconds of sound of 5, 17, 5, and 33. That's what's really important. Now, how it works though, whether it's steam or air, you take the air, you push it through the pipes, it comes up, it rattles the cylindrical round piece which is on the outside, which is almost like a bell. Now that round piece then creates those sound frequencies that we pick up with our eardrums that we recognize as sound. Now the sound frequencies start reacting immediately with the molecules in the air to start creating the sound waves. Now the sound waves get bigger as the molecules and the sound frequencies continue reacting with each other, which helps carry that sound further distance away, which hopefully you'll be able to hear the echo of it once it actually sounded off each day. Now speaking of which, I will now sound it off to you. I'm going to go through that sound sequence process blasting it 3 times to give you an idea of how it repeats itself. So it will be quite loud. It does represent between 80 and 120 decibels of sound. So when we're plugging your ears, if you're having hearing aids, I would also recommend you turning them down as well. And if you want a good laugh, watch the people on the beach because they're not expecting this. Even though I will warn them, they will still not listen to me, and you're all my witnesses. That I warned them. So, I'm going to warn them. Sounding the bog whistle! Sounding the bog whistle! I'm going to start in. I'm going to give myself about 15 seconds. 10 seconds. Starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now 17 seconds of silence. I don't know if you're able to hear the echo of it going across the lake still. So I'm going to be starting in 3, 2, 1. Now 33 seconds of silence. During the 33 seconds of silence, the steam or the air would be building up again to start all over. As you can see, there's a reason why they wanted to move the whistle from the south end of the roof to the north end of the building. Now on a good day, I mean on a really good day, all the wind and the weather is going the right direction. You can hear this over on Mackinac Island, which is 7 miles from here. So I got 10 seconds. Starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so that is how our whistle here at Old Mackinac Lighthouse is utilized to send a message to the sailors in the water and how it works. If you folks have any questions, please come and ask me. Otherwise, thanks for coming out to Old Mackinac Point. My name is Lawson. You folks have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Great job.
Very good.
What a view.
Volunteer. We must have a section roped off the rest.
WJR station.
The building went up in 1890, and the lighthouse itself, the building where it's standing right now.
When the bridge opened, this lighthouse was shut down. And the reason being, they moved the light and the fog signal to the center of the bridge. Made much more sense right where the shipping lane was, rather than here. Now, many of the other lighthouses still operate, but this one was not necessary anymore. Now, before they built the bridge and when they were building the bridge, there was no white fence and the two chocolate buildings didn't exist. It was just the lighthouse and the fog signal building. All this area clear all the way over to where the bridge is today was a big state park campground.
Oh.
So I can remember as a little boy, while they were building the bridge, my dad would bring us all, my brothers and sisters, and we'd camp right here next to the lighthouse. It was 50 cents a night. But if you wanted electricity, it was $1. Dad said, we don't need no stinking electricity. You got a flashlight to get to the bathroom. So it worked for us. But I can still remember as a little boy climbing these porches and then jumping off. But once the bridge opened, they wanted people to be able to picnic, people to be able to get to the water's edge to see the new bridge. So that's when they took the whole campground out, put the fence up, and then made a massive picnic area over here once that occurred. Any questions come out of your little stay here? All right, let's now move on if we could.